Welcome to this edition of the Huntsville Insider. I'm Keith Ward. In this edition, we'll look at how a change in a school board nepotism policy helped to keep one school board member's future wife on the payroll, plus how that school board member landed the seat in the first place with a friendship from a city council member in this episode, which we call All in the Family. On a clear and modestly cool evening on November 2nd, 2021, the Huntsville Board of Education met for an agenda of just 11 items.
We're going to move the agenda along to Pillar 2, Policy 5.2.8, Revision Draft.
Item B under the work session, labeled Policy 5.2.8 Revision Draft, sounded like one of those down-in-the-weeds mundane presentations that school boards must routinely sit through. But for new board member Ryan Renad, it would affect his fiance's future with Huntsville City Schools. Just a few months earlier, in June of 2021, Renad was hoping to be selected by the Huntsville City Council to serve out the remaining 17 months of District 4 school board member Walker McGinnis, who was forced to resign due to health issues. Ryan was counting on help from his friend, Huntsville City Council member Devin Keith, to help get him that school board seat.
I'll repeat, I'd like to renominate Mr. Ryan Renad.
Keith certainly delivered help by nominating and voting for Renad for the job. The heated and controversial city council meeting included an executive session,
and we will take a roll call vote regarding going into that executive session,
followed by a 3-2 vote that elected another nominee.
Since Mr. Cagle has received 3 votes, he will be appointed.
A brief walkout by Devin Keith.
I will return. I'm removing myself from this. I'm removing myself from this meeting.
A second executive session.
A motion has been made for executive session.
Second.
Then a motion to rescind the previous vote.
If I am to understand, you're asking for reconsideration of the vote just taken?
Yes, ma'am.
Followed by a second 3-2 vote that selected Renad for the vacant school board seat.
The new vote has 3 votes for Mr. Renad. Mr. Renad is now declared to be the winner of the vacancy.
More on the City Council vote in Part 2. Being new to the school board, Ryan Renad was unaware that a nepotism policy for school board members would force his future wife, Catherine Jones, a teacher at Morris Elementary, to resign once the two were married. Policy 5.2.8 prohibits any board member from having an immediate family member employed by the school district. The policy stated in part that the employee shall resign their position with the board before their family member assumes office.
We're going to move the agenda along to Pillar 2, Policy 5.2.8, Revision Draft.
On that November 2nd evening, as Renad and other board members listened to the draft revision of the nepotism policy, Board Attorney Chris Pape explained that the need to update the language was to better match recent changes in the state law.
I was looking through the policy manual. There are a few that need to be updated, and this is one that was outdated.
Pape later admitted that the state law he was referring to was last changed way back in 2015.
Mr. Pape, is this a new Alabama law?
It was actually a law from the 2015, and it came into play in 2016. I'll confirm it was in that time frame. It's a few years old.
But school board vice president Michelle Watkins called out the alleged hypocrisy.
Let's just be honest. We got a board member that's about to get married, and we don't need their spouse working directly in the district they're in. That's what I'm saying.
Watkins added that it could cause problems for a principal in their role as a supervisor over an employee whose spouse is a board member in their district.
I wouldn't want someone to feel pressured because they have someone like a spouse of a board member in their district.
Watkins requests that a nepotism restriction for board members be added back into the revised policy.
I'm happy to kind of draft up some language, and certainly I can submit it to the superintendent and Ms. Wellington.
And the policy committee.
As Ryan listened, he knew the original nepotism policy revision would need to pass before his wedding date of March 12, 2022. But what about the School Board Governance Improvement Act?
Hi, Mark Ryan Renad.
When Ryan Renad was sworn in as the Board of Education's newest member, he signed a certificate of affirmation, which, among other things, states that no decision, action, or vote shall be taken or made to serve or promote the personal, political, or pecuniary interest of the member.
If I can ask to have item 1 from page 11 removed, or at least so we can vote separately, please.
Renad certainly understood those principles as demonstrated in a November 16, 2021 meeting in which he recused himself on a vote that would provide a $300 per semester stipend for his future wife. Finally, on December 7, 2021, the nepotism policy revision was up for a decision. Vice President of the Board, Michelle Watkins, again stated her concerns with dropping the nepotism restrictions for board members. Board President Carlos Matthews asked Attorney Chris Pape if the nepotism policy revisions meet what the state standard is today.
That's just the basics of the state law. Boards are allowed to, as long as what they come up with doesn't violate the state law, they are allowed to do additional things to add to their own policies. This is the minimum. What's in the proposed policy is the minimum that matches the statute that was enacted in 2015.
Watkins questions Pape about her requested change from the November meeting.
So I sent a message to the board, and I polled you all on which of the two options you preferred. Mm-hmm. The one that got the majority in the independent polling.
So
to
I'm the
me,
only one that see a problem with it. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying that a majority of the people.
I'm just saying I'm the only one that sees a problem with it, because you're allowing a board member to have a fiance who they're going to marry in their district. Now, I said what I said, and I mean what I said, and I'm not going to change it. So we don't have to discuss it any further. I just want it on record.
Well, Ms. Watkins, while I'm sure
you and I really don't have nothing to discuss. Because if you want to discuss something, you could have discussed it before now.
Ms. Watkins, with all due respect.
Like I said,
we have a motion on the floor.
You don't need to address me.
We will go ahead and vote on that motion.
As the vote is taken, Watkins votes no, and Renad, instead of recusing himself, votes yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Was he afraid that it would not pass without his vote? Perhaps. But one thing is certain, he abandoned the principles of the School Board Governance Act he pledged to uphold. What went on behind the scenes with changing the nepotism policy? What about the claims from Michelle Watkins? Documents provided from an open records request with Huntsville City Schools for all emails concerning this change produced very little of substance. The material included a reply which stated there were emails that were not produced based on applicable privilege, indicating there is missing information that just might answer those questions. So if Ryan Renad's actions and vote served his own personal interest, what else can be found as the layers of his past are peeled back? What about that controversial city council vote that placed Renad on the school board seat in the first place? And how about Renard's connection to Devin Keith, which helped land him that seat? These answers and more in Part 2. Covering the stories that others don't, I'm Keith Ward for the Huntsville Insider.